I think we're good. Yay! Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining Worldhoppers. Today, we're going to be chatting about some of our favorite books from 2020. All of the AdSense revenue from Worldhoppers goes to charity as well as merch sales. But we have a new face joining us today. I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, this is the first time I'm being on Worldhoppers, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm Patrick. I've been writing book reviews for more than 4 years now, but recently I just started my booktube channel, and it's been going really well. I'm very happy about it. I love fantasy books, I love anime, and I love manga, and I love video games.
Yay! And I feel like everybody, whether they realize it or not, you've probably seen Patrick's reviews on Goodreads on pretty much every adult fantasy book. His like the first one that pops up. They're always really eloquent and fantastic. But he's gonna kick off the video today. We have a few prompts here, so we're not just aimless, because sometimes we can go on tangents. But the first prompt here, favorite new author to you. So for those watching, it doesn't have to be a favorite new author debut necessarily, just a new author that you read this year.
In 2020, right?
Yeah. Sorry, when I say this year, it's because it's still like fresh.
Yeah, it's still really fresh. I think for me in 2020, there are two authors that I tried their work for the first time in last year. One is an adult fantasy writer. It's James Islington. He is the writer behind the Lycanius trilogy. I love that trilogy so much. And the other one is a more popular one, but it is not. It is non-fantasy. It's Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Do you guys know? It's the author behind the Shadow of the Wind.
Yeah.
Shadow of the Wind, the Cemetery of Forgotten Books. And yeah, I think those two are the one that the new authors that really clicked with me last year.
That's interesting, because I read the first of the Lycanius trilogy, and I know a lot of people compare it to Wheel of Time. But you don't like Wheel of Time, right?
I don't like Wheel of Time. I didn't like it.
Jesse's little. Sorry, Wheel of Time
I
fan.
don't like Wheel of Time. At least
Oh, you didn't like it? Jesse didn't like Wheel of Time?
No, I didn't. I've only read Eye of the World though.
Same.
But I didn't like it.
Oh, I cannot do it. But I think I've triggered a lot of people with my review on the Shadow Rising.
That was the one. So Patrick, I felt really connected to you, because that's the one that I quit the series at, because I was like, everyone says it's the one that makes you want to, be in it for the long haul, and I was like, no.
Yeah, everyone said the same thing to me. Wait until you get to Shadow Rising, you will fall in love with the series. No, I hate it so much.
So everyone, this is Patrick. Sorry, Wheel of Time fans.
And there goes the ad revenue.
It's just my opinion.
I love that you like Carlos Ruiz Zafón, though. I have those 4 books. I've read the first 3. I haven't read the 4th one. That's one of my goals this year, though, is to reread the first 3 and then finally read Labyrinth of Spirits.
Did you enjoy the previous 3?
Yeah, a lot. It's weird because they're kind of all over the place. And
the fourth
weird.
book connects them all. The fourth book connects them all. It's
so
good.
That's what I heard. So yeah, I'm super excited. They're super weird and random, and I feel like it's not something I typically would like, but they're just so beautiful and immersive. And so yeah, I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I felt really sad when I heard that Carlos Ruiz Zafón passed away last year, because I just finished his book. Literally just finished his book about a month or a few weeks, and then he passed away. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Yeah, it was sad.
So is that series completed?
Yeah, completed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Completed.
Yep.
I'd be really sad if the book was going to come out after he passed away.
Yeah.
That'd be really sad.
Yeah.
No, it was out already.
Well, that got really sad. By the way, I'll add a thanks to Patrick. It's really late his time, so it's morning for most of us. Patrick was willing to record after 10. It's like 10:20 or something right now, right? For you at night?
Yeah, but it's okay. I usually read at night anyway, so it's okay.
You'll just chat about books.
Yeah.
Jesse, do you want to go next? Favorite new author to you?
Sure. I have two for this. So the first one is a new author, and I've only read one of his series, and it's not even a complete series. So this is kind of, I don't know. I feel like I need to read his other series before I can like firmly say he's like an all-time favorite author. But Robert Jackson Bennett, who wrote Foundryside, Shorefall, and I'm going to be reading City of Stairs this month, and I'm very excited about his. I don't know, something about his humor works for me, and I absolutely love his characters. His magic system in Foundryside is something that is so much fun. I love the whole idea of taking the inanimate objects and making them have voices. It just totally worked for me. His pace, I just love that series so far, and it's not even complete. We don't know when we're getting the third book, but hopefully it's soon. So Robert Jackson Bennett just totally worked for me. That is definitely a new favorite all-time series is Foundryside.
Is it going to be a trilogy?
Yeah, trilogy. Yeah, but there's just no news on the third book.
Alan, that's the one that you couldn't get in your blindfold tag, right? Was it book 1 or 2?
Every time we talk about Shorefall, every time I see it on my shelf, I'm reminded of my shame.
Patrick may not know what. Do you know what we're referencing?
No.
Okay, so Alan had to do this challenge where he was blindfolded and his wife was describing covers to him, and he had to figure out what cover it was. And she gave him the best clue. She was like, there's a key on the cover, there's an archway, and he could not figure it out. And his punishment for not getting enough points in that challenge was he had to read A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Not his jam.
And Patrick,
he hated it.
I had just read Foundryside. I had just finished Foundryside. And she says a key, and it could not be a more like just unique cover. And then so I had to read freaking ACOTAR, and I vlogged the experience, and it was the worst.
It's a great vlog though.
Yeah, now people send him ACOTAR merch. They send him a mug, right? Your Restand mug.
I have a Restand mug. They sent me an ACOTAR coloring book. Yeah.
I love it so much.
It fills me with joy. So Shorefall is Alan's shame. Can you even read that book without feeling the shame?
I will take the dust jacket off.
I love it so much. So Robert Jackson Bennett for sure. And then my second is Joe Abercrombie. And it's weird to include him because the First Law trilogy isn't necessarily an all-time favorite for me. I need a little bit more plot than what that trilogy offers. However, his voice and his writing of dialogue and characters and just the way he describes things is so clever. It's so funny. Like I listen to those books on audio and I laugh out loud several times during the time of listening to those books. It was fantastic. I just love his voice so much. So those two I think are probably the new ones to me that really stood out this year.
And I'll add too for those. I mean, I think everyone knows that Stephen Pacey, the narrator for the audiobooks, is amazing. But if you don't know, Jesse doesn't even usually listen to audiobooks for fantasy.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. I can't usually process fantasy books over audio. I usually leave like thrillers and contemporaries to audio. But for some reason, Stephen Pacey's narration, the way he does the voices for all the different characters. Glokta is like the most popular character from First Law, and his voice for Glokta, it just brings it to life in such a way that is so fantastic. So I highly recommend, if you have the chance to check out the audiobooks, please do so.
I'm planning on starting Best Served Cold tomorrow. So finally, I meant to start it forever ago, but yeah, I'm excited to see. I know Leanna will be happy if Leanna's watching.
She loved it so much, right?
She loves Joe Abercrombie so much. What about you, Alan? New author favorite to you?
Well, most authors this year were new to me because I had spent like 10 years outside of the fantasy thing. So before, all I'd read were like Forgotten Realms books, some Malazan books, Black Company, Yeah, and Discworld. So most every author I read this year was new. So my two favorites out of this year that I started is Sebastian de Castell, who wrote the Greatcoats, and Josiah Bancroft, who wrote the Books of Babel. And for similar but different reasons. Like Bancroft is like what Jesse was saying about the authorial voice. Like Bancroft feels, the Books of Babel feel like you're reading a Dickens novel, but if Dickens wrote fantasy and wasn't paid by the word, because it feels classic with the writing, and the writing is just very Victorian. Like you feel like you need to dress up to attend the pros, like to hang out with the pros. But it's not clunky or anything. It just is really, just kind of classy. It's hard to describe. And it's just like this weird kind of surreal journey. It's like part Dickens novel, part Phantom Toll Booth, part Alice in Wonderland, part Gulliver's Travels, like with steampunk. And
all the things.
Characters, especially like the first book is Senlin's book, but in the second and third book, there are more characters. We get more POVs. And what Bancroft does with these characters, they are some of the realest people in the most like absurd circumstances that I read this year. And like you know these people, like you know someone like, and I can't really spoil the characters because if you haven't read the first one, it kind of spoils it. But like you've met these people before, and they're just in extraordinary circumstances, and they're just so good. And De Castell, differently, is like a real life bard. And when reading Greatcoats, I feel like I'm watching like a Three Musketeers movie. And I know everyone makes that comparison, but it's like if Three Musketeers were like National Treasure or Indiana Jones or the Uncharted video games or Tomb Raider. Like it's just this action-packed, like Three Musketeers isn't super action-packed. It's long and they stand around a lot being like, let's French Revolution. But like, way more happens in Greatcoat. And just there's so much virtue. Like the main character, they stand for things. And I really, and this is where I struggle with the Poppy War series, which I love, but no one stands for anything. Like no one has any principle. And part of it's because they're trying to survive. I get it. Like you can't eat principle. I do understand that. But I really like characters that like have this core that they're not going to, or that we're going to see, are they going to betray it or not? And the Greatcoats really stand for something in a world that doesn't stand for anything anymore. And Estelle can write inspirational speeches that are second to none except in inspirational sports movies. Like No Man Breaks the Rock. Like, I'm just like, get him, Falchio, yeah! Like, to the speech in Remember the Titans, where you make sure they remember forever.
Love that movie.
And I'm just like, yeah, go, get him, platoon. Like, so it just appeals to me. They're both Senlin and Greatcoats are just really fun. They're very swashbuckling. Senlin is not much, but is a little slower than Greatcoats, and there's more like action because the heroes are more capable in Greatcoats because they're warriors. I mean, they can sword fight. The people in Senlin, they're not very skilled at things. No. They run into things and they have to find things that aren't fighting to solve their problems.
I compare Senlin to, it's like if Liam Neeson in Taken were the most clueless, naive.
He has no particular set of skills.
He has no particular set of skills, exactly. So he's just like bumbling
very
around.
Different movie.
He like literally sits on a suitcase for a whole day. Like, my wife will probably show up.
I love about the Senlin books that it's just like again, Senlin stands for, he believes in this thing, and he is not going to let, and this is how he kind of like makes allies in the tower, is people look at Senlin as the guy who is not corrupted by the tower, while everyone else has kind of like made compromises and, sacrificed this and that to the tower. Senlin says, the line must be drawn here, no further. Just like that's the card.
It's very allegorical and can be applied to many a thing.
So those are my two favorite from this year.
Alan, I'm so excited for you to continue with The Faithful and the Fallen.
Oh, if I
yeah.
had read more than this, that would probably be on there too. But I've only read that.
God, like the stuff that you love. Oh, you're gonna be living in Ruin specifically. Like,
I know. That's part of the reason why I like Malice so much. But I have to continue. I'm reading Valor this month.
Nice.
Okay, Alex, what about you?
So similar to Alan, I hadn't read anything forever. So everyone is new to me. So I've got a bunch, but I'll mainly talk about Pierce Brown because Red Rising is my favorite series that I read last year. But Brandon Sanderson, for obvious reasons. Mistborn was my favorite until I read Red Rising. Stormlight Archive is obviously incredible as well. I absolutely love John Gwynn. I read Malice and Valor, and I'm reading Ruin this month. Fantastic series. R.F. Kuang was incredible, and I'm reading Burning God now. But Pierce Brown definitely sticks out as the best that I read, and it's a really good blend of sci-fi and fantasy because it's very, very light on the sci-fi elements. It's not something like The Expanse or something that's very heavy and like, here is how everything works in the sci-fi world. It's more of like, we're in space, we're in the future, there's your sci-fi, now let's have a fantasy story. But it has a lot of the kind of Chosen One sort of tropes in it, but it's hyper violent, very adult. As you progress through the books, it gets way more sci-fi in the sense that like you're traveling to other planets and different sort of galaxies almost in a way. And there's all these warring factions going on, but you have, the Game of Thrones references of like the political intrigue and all these people backstabbing each other and vying for power. And just his writing style is so engaging and everything is action packed and keeps you at the edge of your seat. And there are massive moments, cliffhangers, character deaths, things like that just really hit you. And you're like, okay, I have to read the next book. Then he even beyond the first trilogy, which is incredible, flips it from a single POV story to a multi-POV story, introduces new characters, expands the cast, and then it really grows the world as well. So that was just the best reading that I had all year long was Red Rising. And book 6 hopefully will come out this year. I don't know when it's actually going to come out, but
hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
I'm glad that you like the continuation. I thought
Red Rising, I almost put down the book 1 3 or 4 times. I didn't really click with it. I didn't like the Hunger Games comparisons. The writing was kind of juvenile. It felt like characters were being edgy just to like be edgy and swear words. And then by the end of it, I was like, okay, I think I like where this is going. Let's continue. And then Golden Sun and Morningstar were like, it felt like it was a different author. They were infinitely better books. And yeah.
I loved Iron Gold. I thought, or excuse me, not Iron Gold, Morningstar. And I didn't like Iron Gold.
Yep.
I thought Iron Gold was the best written, but I just did not like, I didn't really like a lot of the new POVs.
I didn't either until Dark Age.
And then, but then the current, I don't want to spoil things, the carryover point of view, I hated, and I was mad at Pierce Brown for that.
Yeah.
Like in a friendly way, of course. But I was like, dang it, dude, what are you doing to this person? Why are they making such stupid decisions? Because I really liked the character in the original trilogy. Even sometimes you could sit back and say, dude, what are you doing? Stop doing that. And then I feel like in the continuation, though, I couldn't get behind the character's actions for most of the book. And that was so frustrating because, like, Alan, imagine if Senlin was suddenly just the worst. Like, it would be awful.
Well, see, that's the good thing about it, though, is especially in Dark Age, is you follow a character that in his mind is kind of good, but like to the reader, you're just like, this guy's a piece of shit. I hate him. But it's like you read a lot about him and you have to follow his character, and like he does things that will make you upset. And it's just like, it's so well written though, and like you understand his character while hating him. It's kind of like reading, not sort of different, but like if you had to read like a bunch of Joffrey chapters and like follow his character and like give him compassion and stuff, you'd be like, this guy's garbage, but like I understand him at the same time. It's
is the character you're referring to younger?
Yes.
Okay, that was my favorite of Iron Gold because it was that one, but I didn't like taking someone I loved and then seeing them act like a tool bag. I was like, stop.
Yep.
Anyway. But I also
it happens.
Yeah. I need to reread the original trilogy. I have had some people say I should read Dark Age and like even if you didn't like Iron Gold, keep going. But I'm like, I don't know if I can. I'm already so picky about continuations. Like Mistborn Secret History, I was like, no, I don't like this. So
I hated Secret History. I didn't care about Era 2. And that's the one he's continuing, of course. So I'm gonna read it, but I don't know, whatever.
we'll move on from that. Okay, Deshauna, what about you?
So my top 3 like highest rated books were all new to me authors. I would probably I'm trying to pick one.
Lady Dragon, Fires of Vengeance, we know.
Yeah, definitely that one. No. The top 2, both I've only read this one book from them. So it's kind of hard to say, but I'm gonna go with TJ Klune, House in the Ceruleans. No, I'm gonna go with P. Jelly Clark, Ring Shout. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. Because that book it's a novella. It's like 185 pages. And I heard all about it and heard the horror elements. And that's not typically my jam exactly. I'm sorry if you can hear the cats, by the way. They're like hissing and stop. Oh my God. It's like aggressive right now. They're like growling at each other. Anyway. Yeah, it's 185 pages, but yeah, it just like blew me away, like completely blew me away. I don't think I've ever connected to and become so invested in characters so quickly, like in the first chapter, like very first chapter. And I just keep saying the same thing about this book, but like it truly just was mind blowing that I felt like I knew these characters already right in that chapter. And like we started off with action, things are happening, and people are dying and monsters are being killed. And then we go from there. And yeah, it was just, the pacing was really good. And he packed so much into such a small thing, which sometimes cannot work for me. I've read novellas that are like 100 pages or less, where I'm like, this was too short. Like it needed to be a longer book. I didn't have time to really get invested in all of this really cool premise, but I couldn't get invested. Whereas with this one, I was invested like 100%. Now I just want to read all. And he has a new book coming out in 2021, Master of Jinn. But there's a short story and a novella that are like prequels to it. So I want to read those first. But
is that the one where racist people are actual monsters?
Yeah, so it's the KKK, and it's in like 1915, and basically hate is part of the like fantasy element. There's like magic and stuff, and hate like builds up in people, and if they have enough hate in them, it turns them into literal demons, like from the underworld. So KKK members, they can become what they call Ku Kluxes, and the Ku Kluxes are different from just the clan members. Those are just like people that are clan members. But once they have enough hate in them, they become a Ku Klux, which is this demon thing that's no longer a human. So
I really hope that the ads for this video are not like the electoral college is bad. Like,
oh God. Right. Oh Lord.
I feel like the technology is actually kind of insane. There was one time, this has nothing to do with books, but just on that topic of ads. And this is actually, I was like, okay, this is a little sad. So I was wearing like a headscarf, and I had it tied in my hair, and like there was an ad for like cancer, and I was like, okay, because of like the pink. And I was like, oh no, I don't know.
I've never looked at any of the ads that appear on my channel, so I have zero idea what's being shown to people.
I have no idea either.
I get a lot of Disney ads apparently, and I'm like, yes!
There's this one channel that like every single video, I get a chapstick ad. And I'm like, this channel has nothing to do with like beauty or lip care. I don't know why I'm getting chapstick ads only on that channel. Anywho, so favorite new author to me. So this one's tricky. I think I'm going to go randomly, which I've only read one thing by this person, but ML Wong, because
I love her so much. I love her book so much.
So, Sword of Kaigen had a few things in it that I didn't totally love, but what I did love in it, that the majority of the book, right, like 300 something pages in the middle, was so good. It was everything I want in a fantasy book. The emotional stakes, the exploration of grief, the quiet victories over your enemies, which I love, the really amazing triumphant moments. But in this book, it was like they couldn't really do that. So it was the subtle ways that they could, win, if you will. But the emotions were so good. I feel like I was almost going to cry for like those 300 pages the whole time. And there's just so many hits pacing wise in that section where something sad happened and then you get something else and someone will say something or the narration will say something and you're like, no, stop it. So I'm moving forward, I'm hoping this author puts out more. I know that they have like a couple of other books, but they don't know if they're going to continue that series or not. But if they write more books in the future, I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they have the potential to be like my favorite author of all time. So it's Shoshana and Alex, you guys haven't read that one yet, right?
Correct.
Which one?
I have not.
Sword of Kaigen.
Sword of Kaigen.
Oh no, Sword of Kaigen. No, I've somebody actually bought it for me like a month or two ago. It's on my shelf somewhere, but I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah, the beginning is it almost feels like young adult middle grade in a sense because it's quite on the nose and the character is only, I think, 14.
14, yeah.
The one that we follow a lot. And it's very much like, this is the history of Kaigen. And it's just super on the nose for a while. And like Alan always talks about how you basically go to a CW superhero show like Arrow randomly, which is true.
Literally do. Like, I didn't see that episode.
It is really bizarre. And I remember when I was describing the book to my husband and I was like, at first I was like, oh, it's interesting because I thought it was going to be older time period inspired, which it kind of is, but there's technology and video games and like cell phones and stuff. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah. And then later when I was reading, I was like, oh, we're getting this flashback sequence. It's almost like a Daredevil vibe. They're like superheroes and they're fighting crime. And he's like, what is this book? It sounds so bizarre. But
that middle section, the military action, like
masterpiece.
I had no idea like she could write anything like that for the first the first 150 pages. I'm like, what is this? And then it's like, oh my gosh, that is some good military writing, like good military writing, and I mean, so good.
Yeah, I don't think a book has made me cry more. Especially, like, I don't think a fantasy book has made me cry more. I was like, there's no way a book can make me cry more than Crescent City did this year. Because Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas, that last 200 pages, just Deshauna.
Alan's going to read it next.
But, man, Sword of Kaigen, that was the most emotional, best action.
The duel chapter is what got me.
Oh yeah, that one was so emotional, so good.
So good.
Like she could have ended the book there, and I'd have been satisfied. It was just so good.
I have to say really quick, Jesse, since you mentioned Crescent City, I was asking my patrons a book that they might want to buddy read in February, and I was like, since it's February, some of these might be a little more romance leaning. I'll include one that's not romance leaning. And one of the options that patrons could vote on was Crescent City. And I was laughing because, like, no one was voting for it. And, and so I messaged. I was like, I'm loving that none of you, like, I think this is hilarious. And then one person voted for it. And they're like, I tried it and I DNF'd it. So I just need another go. So they voted for it. Like, no one else had voted. And I was like, okay, I have and I don't think I give off, like, gross Sarah J. Maas. I don't give off those vibes, but I feel like I don't know. I think that for some reason the people that watch me aren't really Sarah J. Maas fans. It'll be interesting because I want to finish out Throne of Glass series, which is the one I feel like that used to be the OG one to make fun of until ACOTAR became so big. But I do want to read Crescent City. I kind of want to see. I don't know. I don't hate Sarah J. Maas's writing. ACOTAR was a little too I don't know. I wanted a little more plot. And then Throne of Glass was like, it was fun, but I was like, oh, it's kind of a long series, and there's a lot of other stuff I want to read. Alan's face, Alan.
There's no plot. They just eat dinner. They eat breakfast and dinner and talk about how dangerous things are.
Honestly, Alan, I feel like the second one feels like there's even less plot.
Yeah.
So
House of Earth and Blood, though, there's hardly any like the sexy times.
What was it called?
Yes.
House of
That's
Earth,
true.
Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. The series is Crescent City, and then it's the book was House of Earth and Blood.
yeah, I'm still excited about that one.
I think you'll have an okay time with it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
fun.
mind, the saucy scenes. I'm not over here like, as Deshauna puts it, like clutching my pearls. Like I'm not over here like, oh my goodness.
I am.
Like I don't mind those inputs, but I just like I tend to want like a little more plot than what Akatar gave. That's why I'm okay going back and reading Throne of Glass, because that one I think is a little more plot to
Yeah.
it.
Stuff going on. And
Yeah.
world building.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if you heard my dog grumbling a lot. Okay, favorite new release. We'll go ahead and do the same order. So Patrick, if you want to start. I have a feeling some of us are going to say maybe the same answer for this one.
30 minutes on that first question.
New release.
As usual.
I'm just gonna choose two for now. They're at the top two anyway, so it's A Time of Courage by John Gwynne. It's the final book in the Of Blood and Bone trilogy. I think he has successfully concluded the Banished Land saga with so masterful. It's just so amazing. I love his book so much. And I really thought that he couldn't have concluded better than Red. And right now I have difficulty deciding which one I like more, because Red was more emotional, but The Time of Courage was more epic. And it really concluded the Banished Land. And the other one is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. Obviously, that was these two are my most anticipated books of last year, and I think both of them delivered on my expectations.
That's always such a good feeling, because you kind of get scared. You're like, please be good.
Yeah.
Well, in Rhythm of War, well, that probably some of you feel this way. I don't know. Probably Alex. In part 3, I did feel that it's a bit repetitive. In part 3, but other than that, I think Sanderson has done something truly incredible again, especially regarding the Cosmere stuff. Wow,
Yeah, for sure.
just wow.
I'll once we get to me, we can just skip me, because I'll just piggyback off what you just said. For me, I loved part 3. I think Jesse felt similarly.
Yeah, it did.
For me, part 4 was the one that I didn't like as much, because I felt like the reveals were kind of obvious to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like one thing I think Sanderson does so well is write what feels like the most impossible task, and then seeing how your characters outwit their circumstances, or how they just like by pure force are able to do it, that kind of stuff. But in that one, I hate to say it felt convenient, because I think it was led up to you guys who have read it know what I'm talking about, but
it happened a little quick.
Yeah, it was kind of like, I don't know. It wasn't even that the characters necessarily, the ones you were following weren't necessarily the ones that made the things happen. I don't know, because he presented something that was so difficult. Like I had no idea how it was going to be resolved. And I love when that happens.
Yeah.
And then how it was resolved was kind of, I just thought, I hate to say it was kind of easy, but it didn't really feel like our characters had to, I don't know. I honestly, you know what I think part of it is that situation is so applicable to our own world in a sense, as far as like the injustices that have been done. How do you connect to people when, your ancestors, so to speak, have done terrible things, and you're like, how do we bridge this gap? And I'm like, I want to see how Sanderson bridges this gap. And then it kind of was like, actually, JK. And that's all I can say without spoiling it. But that was kind of a bummer for me. But otherwise, part 3, I could not get enough of. Like the one character sneaking around, which is probably the part that was repetitive to you.
Yeah.
I loved it.
I love that guy, but I still, oh my God, again.
Yes, I agree with you, Patrick. Yeah.
I mean, overall, like I liked Rhythm of War a lot, but it had the most of the Stormlight books, it had the most boring sections for me outside of what I initially felt in The Way of Kings when it was like, all right, are we really doing like another bridge run like again? But I mean, overall, as far as like a Cosmere perspective, though, like hands down, it's the best Cosmere book that he's written because there's it's like
Oh God,
so much Cosmere is happening.
Yeah.
What's funny though is Way of Kings is my other favorite of the 4.
Yeah.
So I think that what you're touching on is why you know what it is? It's that character. Let's be real.
Yeah.
I just like following that character.
He's my favorite character now, and I have more appreciation for Way of Kings after reading the rest of them. But at the time, I was like 40% into The Way of Kings, and I was just like, when is this gonna get amazing? Like everybody says, and then it did, but it just took me a while.
Yeah, my favorite new release is also Rhythm of War. So that's surprising. The thing is, yes, it's my favorite Stormlight book. I agree that there were weaker parts to it, but I think that's to be expected in a book that long.
Right.
It can't constantly be amazing. The thing with Rhythm of War is the amazing parts in it were the best moments for me in the entire series. Like the things that happened that made that book great were the greatest, in my opinion. It like was just such high of highs in that book, and
low of lows,
and that's why it's my favorite. And the Cosmere implications that you all are saying, it felt like this was the beginning of Marvel Cinematic Universe coming together, and you're like, oh my God, we're about to get Infinity War. Like that's what it felt like it was building up to it. I love that stuff,
and it has one of the best. Like, okay, I don't think a person would like maybe actually say this, but the life before death, you guys know the line. That line, I censored myself and I said "you butthole" when I was doing my Rhythm of War chat, but that part was just like yes, like it was
best moments.
Yeah. So, and I feel like what that book did well is it took a character that I feel like you know, like, I don't know if anybody had too many strong emotions about this one character in the story, and then it just, their arc in relation to an antagonist, and that's the best antagonist. Because we haven't had there's a certain character everyone loves to hate in the first couple because they are the worst, but this character was different because it was, you could empathize with their struggle and the way that they interacted with this other character. Anyway, this is going to turn into a Rhythm of War chat. So I'll stop now.
Your turn, Alan.
I didn't have good luck with new releases. Every new release, so Tower of Fools, I DNF'd. City We Became, I DNF'd. Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler was a 3-star read. It was fine. Like, I read it because I love Django Wexler's shadow campaigns. And it was not... I mean, it's a book that someone else will love. It's just not really a book that I would love. And then Burning God, which I was disappointed by. I gave that 3 stars as well. So those are like the 4 new releases I read. So I didn't have great luck. If we go back to 2019, The Hod King, the 3rd book in the Books of Babel, it is the longest one, and it is a lot of setup, so it feels really slow. Well, the last 150 pages are not slow at all. Oh my God! Like, so much happening. What the 3rd book is setting up for the Fall of Babel in November is it's going to be just as long as Hod King, but like there's no more setup to do. So I cannot wait for a 600 and something page book that's no setup. There's no setup to be had. All the setup was just done. So I cannot imagine how amazing. I'm getting my hopes up too high, but I am so excited to see the conclusion of this. But I have to go back to 2019 for a book that I like really loved. Again, I haven't read fantasy in forever, so much of it was, I'm working through the backlog. Similar to Alex.
Yeah. That's why I basically read the entire Cosmere this year. Just kind of like kept going. I was like, all right, done. Next thing. My favorite new release is really the only new release that I read this year, which was Fires of Vengeance. And that was an incredible book. I felt like it grew everything that I loved about Rage of Dragons and made all the side characters more interesting, fleshed out the magic system more, made Tau less of just a rage monster, and actually set up what I thought was a very good female character as opposed to Zuri from book 1, which was kind of just like an exposition dump in all of her scenes. Sior is an awesome character in book 2. And just, I mean, the plot's cool. The action's great. It's getting really interesting. You have it because you love it so much. It was way better than Rage of Dragons. And it's just as breakneck speed, tons of action, almost relentless to a degree. And he throws in some like really grimdark scenes too, which almost caught me off guard a little bit. But I really loved it. So
we'll see if I love it.
Well, you really didn't like the first one, so I think you'll like it more. I don't know if you'll
didn't like it though. I feel like maybe I'll like this better, but I won't finish it if I'm hating it. I'm not going to hate read it. I'll just DNF it. Oh, is it my turn now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, sweet. I'm going to go with House in the Cerulean Sea for this one. TJ Klune, which is contemporary fantasy. So it's not like some, high epic fantasy thing, but it was just the cutest dang book ever. Like made me so emotional. I legit will get emotional if I like really start thinking about some of the lines and the moments. It just had all these like tender, sweet little moments. Like if you need a feel good book with some fantasy stuff, because there's like fantastical creatures, and that's the whole thing. Is this guy? There's kids that are magical youths, and they're in orphanages, and he has to go around and like make sure these orphanages are kept, good, and the kids are taken care of, and all this. And he goes to one that has a bunch of highly classified kids, and it's just so cute. So yeah, if you ever need like a palate cleanser or just something to make you feel better about the world, House in the Cerulean Sea is 100% it. And I just want to read everything by TJ Klune now, because oh my God, I haven't been, I think, that like frequently emotional from a book. I don't think ever. Like I just was so.
Your Instagram stories were hilarious because you're like, oh my gosh, and you're like all clearly you've been crying.
I don't get like that emotional from books either, really, and like they're like cute moments. It's not like sad. They're just so many like, oh my God, this is so cute. I can't wait.
I'm so excited. I think I'm gonna read it next month in February.
Yay.
So yeah, I'm excited. So since I already basically answered, we'll go ahead and do favorite book no one else likes or knows about. And I'll kick this one off. So Patrick has read this book and he likes it. So I just feel like no one knows about it, which is Ninth Reign. And okay, Patrick, I don't know if you've had this before. So I sang Ninth Reign's praises quite a bit last year, but the accessibility for that book isn't very good. And I always feel bad because
it's difficult.
Yeah. So I always feel bad because people are like, I literally don't know how to get this book. So I just want to say if you haven't been able to get it, if you go to, I think Amazon UK's website, you can usually at least get the Kindle edition from there. But for some reason, if you search it on Amazon US, I don't think you can find it on Kindle. It's really weird. And I think it went out of stock. And like the really conceited part of me is like, is that because of me? like the paperback edition. But I don't actually think I have that much influence. But it was just so weird, but so good. Like every time I try to explain it, I'm like, I wasn't on drugs when I read this. I swear. It just sounds like so like. Every time I'm like, so there are this group of people that are like elven vampire-like people who used to eat the sap from this tree, and the sap ran out because the tree died. So then they started eating people's blood. Like it just sounds so weird. But that's not even really the setup for the story. That's just like one group of people and the kind of backstory behind them and why they are so at odds with, basic humans. And then there are also witches, and there's weird technological things that pop up and like sites where former wars happened, and there's like weird invisible ghost spirit things that hang out around. It's really weird. They like turn people inside out, and anyway, it's so good though. It was really fun. It sounds crazy, but I don't feel like it's dense by any means. It's just not dense at all, but it's a lot of like, what the heck? But I had so much fun with it. And it's not what the heck like Malazan Book of the Fallen. So if anybody's scared, it's not like that. It's just there's so many weird new things, and you're like, this is so interesting. And I tabbed a part where I was like, okay, finally, I'm like getting some explanation here. And the characters are fun. I think they're
definitely. I love who Noon.
Yeah.
Thor, Noon, Thor, and Vintage. Yeah, the main trio is just so lovable. And I think the problem with this series is that Jen Williams is not published in the US.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to access her books. I think the only way to access her books right now is through Book Depository.
Right.
And as you said, Amazon UK. But right now, I saw her tweet, and I think she said that it's really out of stock. So maybe it's because of you.
Sorry, everyone.
I have it because somebody sent it to me. So I don't know where they sent it to me from, but I own it.
Yeah, I was able to get the first one also.
Yeah, Deshaun borrowing my copy. They're beautiful. They're really pretty editions. The color scheme and everything. I mean, that's not important, but they're pretty books. I don't know why I said that, because that just makes people even more upset if they can't get a hold of it. Like, you can't get it, but it's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Take my word for it, because I have
Elle
it.
has a PS5 and books that you can't get.
I don't have. Okay,
Thing, Alex. I was thinking the same thing.
you guys brought this up. We had not addressed this. I don't have it yet. I just will get it in like a week.
And
Wait,
so you're like, look at how pretty the graphics are, and you can't get one.
I told you that you guys are the ones that bring it up. You bring it upon yourselves. I'm gonna harass you with clips of you playing it. I'll take pictures with it.
She's gonna have Ninth Reign standing on top of her PS5.
Yes, exactly. That's the plan. Anyway, Patrick, if you want to go next.
I think for this one, I think I will go for the two series. It's self-published, both of them. I talk about them quite a lot in my channel. It's the Patronus trilogy by Dirk Ashton, and the other one is Ash and Sand trilogy by Richard Nell. For Patronus trilogy, it is an urban fantasy, and to be more precise, it's an urban epic fantasy.
Oh.
It combines mythologies from all around the world, and I think Dirk Ashton is doing something truly incredible with the premise, because I cannot say this because it's spoiler, but yeah, the stuff that he did with the mythologies and the way he combined with the actions and everything is just so unique. I don't think I've ever read any urban fantasy like that before, and it is so underrated because it is self-published and not quite a lot of people read published books, the one that I know anyway. But it is amazing, and as Ash and Sand trilogy recently completed too last year. It is a grimdark fantasy trilogy, and yeah, I think those two are the most underrated one in my opinion.
What was that first one called?
Patronus trilogy.
Oh, Patternless. Okay.
The Patronus trilogy.
I think it's the weird thing about Patronus trilogy though is that in the first book, I wasn't really convinced in the first half because it contains everything that I dislike about YA fantasy, like the insta love, the oh my god he's so hot, and oh my god, yeah, something like that, and then it just changed immediately in the second half. It's like Dirk Ashton finally know what he's going to do with the series, starting from there, and it's amazing starting from there. Yeah,
I don't read a lot of urban fantasy, but I am interested in this.
Yeah.
I don't read a lot of urban fantasy too. They rarely click for me, but this one really did. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
Man, I feel like the one I want to talk about, a lot of people do know about, and it's a sci-fi series. It's the Themis Files by
I love that series.
by Sylvain Neuvel. I don't think it's that like underrated. I do think a lot of people know about it, but I just don't see it talked a whole lot about. Maybe it's because of my sphere. We usually talk more about fantasy than sci-fi. But the audiobooks, if you can get the audiobooks for that series, I highly recommend, because the narration is done by different people for each character. So it immerses you in that way. It's a basic like premise where there might be hidden aliens on Earth that have been around for a very long time, because when this little girl is very young, she accidentally falls into this huge robotic hand, and that kind of leads to this search of where is the rest of this robot's body. So I think that the premise itself isn't entirely unique. It's the way the story is told through like interview style format, through like it's more like, it feels like you're listening to like a documentary almost. And it's super cool. And I love the main character. It's one of those main characters who is kind of nameless. It's a very mysterious person that you don't know their past, you don't know really who they are, but they're somehow involved and know everything kind of before you do. And I love characters like that always seem to be like one step ahead of you. I will say the third book, the final book in the trilogy, was a big disappointment for me. But the first two books were so fantastic that I still love the series so much. So that one I think is the one that I don't hear talked about quite enough, and I love it. I love it.
So it's like the grown-up Illuminae files, right?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah. Alan?
Mine is probably Shadow and Summer or Betrayal in Winter, which are the first two books of the Long Price Quartet. I haven't read the last two because I've been putting them off. I'm reading the third book this month. And I think that's because nothing happens. So it is Daniel Abraham's Long Price Quartet is there's no action in them.
I love that series though. I love that series. I love that series.
Nice. There's no action. It's all like people that like political intrigue. Like that's what this is. It's all very slow movement behind the scenes. It's about, there's this Asian inspired empire that has these like they can bind these ideas into like human form. Like stone made soft they use. It's just this spirit that can make stone soft, which helps them mine things, and it makes them this Titanic like economic empire because they have these spirits. But at the same time, there's this expansionist European empire that wants to come and like take over, like it's taken over all the surrounding territory, but it can't take over this country because they'll just turn the spirits. Like he can make the mountain soft to mine, but he can also make it like the mountains collapse on people. And so they instead are trying to undermine the Asian countries. They're trying to destabilize their political system and their economic system by like trying to tank their economy, trying to interfere in like their political lines and stuff, and finding people allied. And so it's very slow, like because there isn't any action, because the only powerful thing are these spirits. Everyone else is they're just people who aren't like warriors or anything like that. There's not really any warriors at all. There's just the people who summon and bind those spirits. And it's just really, really good because I don't know, I feel a lot. I root for them. It's very, very tense, but in a very, very quiet way. The conclusion of Shadow and Summer was just really kind of like heartbreaking, despite the fact that, you know, it's just very, very quiet, no big action scenes. And I was still like, I just sat there with the book like, whoa, like that happened. Whoa. And in Betrayal in Winter, it has one of the like most tragic, just like villain characters. I'm just like, man, I feel for you, but you are awful. You are the worst person I have ever seen, but I do feel really bad for you, you terrible, terrible person. And so it's just really good. And no one talks about him. I think this is Daniel Abraham's like wheelhouse, economic intrigue, if you will, because I think his other series, Dagger and Coin, which I want to read this year, is kind of about like what wins wars. Is it the dagger, which is like the military might, or is it the coin? Is it the money? And that really interests me just in general. So I know it's not for everybody, but I have really, really enjoyed the first two books.
I think you're really going to enjoy the next two books, An Autumn War and
Price of Spring.
Yeah, Price of Spring. Those two are the best one of the series in my opinion.
I'm so excited.
Especially the third one. The third one is really good.
I've
as you
put it
said-
off since September.
September.
Yeah, I've put it off since September.
Ah.
So I'm reading Autumn War this month.
So,
Yeah.
Alan, you said the first one is A Shadow in Summer,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. There are less than 12,000 ratings, and it has a
Yeah.
3.61 average rating.
It is very slow. Like
It's
I want
very
to say
understandable
nothing
though
happened.
that people don't like it. I cannot imagine a lot of people like that book.
Patrick, your review is the first one that pops up. You're 3-star.
Patrick,
Hey, I gave the second one 4.
I think I liked the first book. Most people like the rest of the series better than the first one. I think I liked the first book more than most people. But I definitely say that people should give it a try because I really, really enjoyed it. But after the first one, I mean, you'll know if it's for you or not. Like it's
It's
It is short. It is quite short.
it is very short. It's like only like 300 pages.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm like looking it up because it sounds so good to me. Yeah, it says it's 331 pages in the hardcover. That's
It's all character work. All of it.
Yeah, it's all.
okay. I might have to. I put it. I'm like putting them in my phone as you guys say them. So I'm not like texting or something. Alex, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I read mostly things that everyone knows about. I guess Joshana will be back in a second. So one of the earlier books that I read in the very beginning of 2020 was a book that I grabbed because of the cover. It's called Fate of the Fallen by Kel Cade. Because the cover, which
yeah.
show.
The one that's holding an axe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get him from like behind.
Because
Yeah,
I saw this
Ugh.
and I was like, damn, that looks really nice. And it's pretty short.
I haven't read that one.
It was
I read
really
that one.
cool, and I feel like no one's read it. I mean, you're talking about less than 12,000. This has less than 2,600 ratings on Goodreads.
Wow.
But it was a pretty interesting spin on like a traditional epic fantasy. Obviously, it's very short, so it's not like a long drawn out thing. But it basically flips the chosen one trope on its head, where it's like, what if the chosen one fails or dies, or like they can't fulfill the prophecy? Like, what happens? So you basically end up following the main character's best friend, who actually becomes the main character. And it almost feels like a sort of like a D&D campaign or like a quest story where he's kind of like collecting people along the way to like try to fulfill the prophecy because the chosen one can't do it. And it was pretty interesting. It's not like the most fleshed out world or anything. It's pretty like standard fantasy setting, but it was a lot of fun. And I feel like no one really knows about it or talks about it. So that would be my choice. And I don't know if this is continued yet or not. This came out in December of 2019. So I don't think it's been continued yet, but
I'm surprised because it was a book of the month book. That's how I got my
Was
edition.
it?
And usually
Oh, nice.
those get a boost, obviously, because of your selection. But
Yeah.
it has I mean, you just said it's got a little under 2,600. Ninth Rain has even less than that.
Yeah.
I
Was
looked
it?
up Jesse's Themis Files is like 70,000, but I looked up Illuminate's like 113. So Themis
I love it.
Files is like half of
Oh,
Illuminate.
wow.
Yeah, I
I
like
didn't know
Fate of the
Ninth Rain was
Fallen.
that
Are
unknown
we
either.
reading Fate of the Fallen in shelf space in March?
Yeah, it's March.
Oh,
It's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it. It's not like a super, like, I don't know. It's
It
not
was
like a
fun.
super detailed epic high fantasy where you're gonna get like a ton of detail. It's like it's pretty straightforward and just enjoy it. It's like a fun quest that they go on.
Yeah.
You
It's
just
like
made
what
it.
if
Fun time.
Frodo failed, and Samwise had to like take up the mantle, but it's better than Samwise for
Which Alan will
Alan's
love
taste.
because he's
We all know
exactly
how
like Sam.
It's not actually a
He's a
Samwise
hobbit.
style
He carries
character, but
things
it's just
and
This was
Yeah.
sent to me. I own one Funko Pop, and it's this one.
I love it.
You've made me, because I know Deshauna read that one and enjoyed it as
Yeah.
well, but you've made me even more excited when you said it's not super detailed. I'm like, oh, good.
It's not. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's very much like you start in a farm. Like these guys are foresters. Somebody's like, "Hey, you're the chosen one. Like, you got to go be the chosen one." He's like, "What? Okay, let's go." And then his friend is like, "Well, I got to tag along too because I'm your best bud." So it's very much like, "Hey, it's Frodo's the chosen. Like, he has to do the ring, and
You're
Sam's his best
literally
friend."
making me want to drop everything and just pick it up.
It's really fun.
I know, it
super
sounds
quick to
so
read
fun.
too. But it's obviously not as detailed as Lord of the Rings or Eye of the World or anything like that. It's not heavy description. It's pretty like just
Fun.
We're going on this quest and
Yeah.
just kind of enjoy it. Yeah.
And then Deshauna, you got cut out for a bit, but what was your answer for this one?
I'm looking at my list for the year, and I mean, really, the only one that I have isn't fantasy. Well, another one is kind of magical realism, but I've seen people talk about it. So I'll go with that one. Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. I have seen people talk about it though. I don't know how like popular it is on Goodreads, but it's one that I feel like deserves more recognition. It's magical realism, but it's like heavily inspired by the author's actual life. So it's memoir-esque. It's very inspired by their actual life, but then there's like this whole magical realism element, and it just tackles so many things, so many topics, so many important themes, and it's very like intersectional with everything it's talking about. It's very intense as far as like trigger warnings, like straight up actual trigger warnings for just a myriad of things. Definitely, I would highly recommend that anyone who is interested in it check it out on Goodreads for trigger warnings and stuff, or check it out wherever, because yeah, it's very intense, but it was really, really good. And I tend to not really enjoy magical realism because it just ends up making me feel like, okay, I either want you to be contemporary or I want you to be fantasy.
Right.
Like, I don't want this, like, what's happening? Is this real? I don't know, man. And it just bugs me usually. But in this one, it didn't bug me at all. I got kind of into it and yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Had a good time.
So we've hit an hour. We have one last question. You guys can answer either or both, but a favorite popular fantasy book specifically that you read this last year in 2020, and or favorite non-fantasy book. So we'll just go ahead and go the same order if you guys are okay with that. With what's, I'm assuming everybody sees the same screen. So Deshauna, do you want to go first for that one?
Oh, sure. So my favorite popular fantasy book that I read this year is Jade War by Fonda Lee.
Oh yes, amazing.
I read both actually, Jade City and Jade War this year. But man, Jade War was so good.
So intense.
Yeah, so intense. I got so emotional. I couldn't handle it at the end. I was crying. I was like, I say I like never cry, but then I've talked about crying like 3 times.
I didn't love Jade City, and I was like, you can just tell me what happens in Jade War. And when she was telling me, I'm like, yeah, stupid freaking. I don't want to say the character because then like it reveals that they live after book 1. But there's this one character. I'm like, he's just so stupid. He drives me crazy. And when Deshauna was telling me some of the things he does, I'm like, just this idiot. And I wasn't reading it, and I was upset.
Yeah. So that's my favorite popular one. And then my favorite non-fantasy that I read this year would be The Signature of All Things by Elizabeth Gilbert, because I love City of Girls so much, and I have now read it 3 times in the last year. And so I read it twice in 2020, but that's the only one of her other works that I've read that's fiction, because I did read her nonfiction Big Magic and I kind of did not like it. But Signature of All Things is another historical fiction, and it was really, really great too. Not on City of Girls level, but it was still really great. Her authorial voice, just, it speaks to my soul, and I love it so much. I kind of don't care what she writes. If it's fiction, like, I want to read it. Doesn't matter what the plot or the story is. I don't really care.
I just added it.
That was quick.
And then Patrick, if you want to go for this one.
Yeah. Well, for me, the popular fantasy, the one that I just mentioned is Rhythm of War. That's the most favorite one because, well, it is the most popular one. But for favorite non-fantasy, it is The Cemetery of Forgotten Books by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. Just amazing stuff. I think what amazed me even more because that it is historical fiction, right? And I've never even been to Barcelona. But that book, that series really makes me want to go there. And the translation is incredible. I think the translator did such an amazing job. I don't know how accurate this is, but it really worked so well. The writing was so beautiful, and there's a lot of emotional moments, so much. And I think Carlos was a genius in how he connected all 4 books, because as Jasana said that, sorry, that sometimes it can feels weird when you read it, reading the first, second, and third. They feel like separate books, but in the 4th one, they really connected, and it works so geniusly, in my opinion.
It does. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, since you mentioned translations, I want to read A Hero Born, and I saw your review where you said the translation is terrible.
Oh God!
The sadness in your face right now.
It's so stupid. Oh my God.
I'm so nervous now.
Do you guys speak other language?
I speak a little Spanish, not a lot.
A little
but...
Japanese.
Yeah. For example, sorry, how to say this? For example, there's a character named Nani. Nani in Japanese is what, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The character is literally named Nani. He's supposed to be called Nani, okay? But no, in this translation, everything is translated into English. So it's just so weird. It doesn't make sense. like the character that's supposed to be called, let's say, Nani again. What attacked this? See, that's so weird.
No.
Hold on. They make her name what?
No. This is just example. This is just an example. So for example, let's say Elliot. There is, let's say, there is a meaning behind Elliot. Let's say there is a meaning, and then the meaning is supposed to be again, example, what? Let's say they use the translator
directly.
They're not using the real name.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. So it would be like the characters being like, Nani, go do this. But the translation is, what? Go do this.
Exactly.
They made they
like a literal translation.
They didn't make her name what. They thought that by them saying Nani, they were saying what in certain instances.
Yeah, instead of like just somebody's name.
Instead of just somebody's name. Oh no, that would drive me nuts.
So is that something that will frustrate people who wouldn't know otherwise? Or is it more like a personal, it was really aggravating for you?
That's the thing. I don't know about it because I know Chinese, right? But I don't know how it works for other readers who doesn't know. But for me, it was so incredibly annoying. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Jesse, that would be annoying. Hi.
Oh yeah, like I can see how that would be not good. The height. So my favorite popular fantasy book is The Poppy War this year. Oh my God. Like will go down as one of my favorites ever. So fantastic. I feel like I don't need to explain too much because it's so popular now, but it's based on the events from the Sino-Japanese War, and particularly it focuses very heavily on a real event, the rape of Nanking, and it brings a lot of attention to it that I otherwise wouldn't have known the details of this event, and it's horrible. It's horrible, but it's so well done, and I love that it brings attention to something that a lot of us didn't study in school, which is really a shame. So I love it. I love that book so much, and I love Rin, even though Alan, I know you hate Rin, but I love Rin. And then my favorite non-fantasy book is actually I just read it in December, and it overtook a couple of others. Nosferatu by Joe Hill, adult horror. If you like horror at all, go read it. The audiobook again, I'm giving a lot of audiobook recommendations. Audiobook again is amazing. It's got an amazing villain that you just love to hate so much. It's actually quite fantasy. So it's not horror based in reality. It's very much Charlie Manx is not entirely human. And if you know what Nosferatu means in German, then you might know, wink, wink, what Charlie Manx might be. But it's just so fantastic. And I love when books take like a child character and a parent character and focus heavily on like exploring the themes around like how far a parent will go for their child. I love that stuff. So it just had so many of the things I love. Go read those for Atu and go read The Poppy War. Those are both amazing.
Alan, do you want to go next?
Yeah. My favorite popular one is my third favorite book of the year was Final Empire. First Mistborn book, because I'd never read Brandon Sanderson, and Mistborn just ticks so many boxes. Like Kelsier freaking stands for something. Yeah. You know, they're trying to overthrow an evil empire. There's a freaking heist. Like, it is action. There's political intrigue, but mostly action from like almost like the first part is them making the plan. So it's like that part in Ocean's 11 where it's like, and you're going to do this, and you're going to be carried in the crate or whatever. And then from then on, it is just go, go, go. And there were twists that I didn't see. And it was just, I loved it. I loved it so much. Like, I know some people just, you know, think it's like, oh, let's overrate it. Maybe. But I mean, for me, it hits so many specific things that I really love. So, and then favorite non-fantasy book, I started rereading the Sharp series by Bernard Cornwell. And Cornwell has 3 series. He's got the Sharp series, which is about and it's historical fiction. It's about the Napoleonic Wars. He's got an Arthur series, which is like a realistic kind of like gritty tale of King Arthur as an actual Britain. And then his
which one?
Yeah, the Saxon started, which he's finishing this year, or just finished or something.
It's finished.
Yeah, it finished, and that's the Saxon / Viking series. And I love Cornwell. Like, if you like, Patrick and I were talking about this yesterday. In the Malice discussion. If you like John Gwynn's kind of like fighting scenes and stuff, he has read a lot of Cornwell.
With Bernard Cornwell's.
Yeah, Bernard Cornwell writes military scenes like it's just the best. Like, it is brutal and it is impersonal, and it is just like, what I really like is that, think about how often in fantasy, when you read, this isn't fantasy, how often can the lower class not read and write? We don't really think about that. Like, I rarely read books where people can't read, but Cornwell do what? Yeah.
Yeah.
But in Sharp's, he's in the ranks. Like, you root for him because he does stand for some stuff, but mostly he's just trying to survive. But he can't read. And it's just like, oh, every time that comes up, I'm like, Sharp, like, why can't you read? You're the main character of a book. Like, you need to know how to read. Like, everyone needs to know how to read. You just can't. And I just like that stuff. It's super realistic. Like, the Napoleonic Wars is really interesting to me because it's flintlock fantasy without the fantasy. And it's just seeing battle tactics and people blown apart by cannons. And he does, like, Jesse, you're talking about Nanjing, and it's not quite that bad. But in the Napoleonic Wars, I mean, there are the things called, when you're sieging a city, there's something called the forlorn hope. When the first breach in the wall is made, every soldier rushes through. And it's called the forlorn hope because your chance of survival is close to 0. Because all the enemy is gathered around that breach, and you're just like surging through, trying to get through. It was one of the only ways that regular troops could advance in rank, because back then you purchased your rank. So one of the only ways you could get promoted was surviving that breach. And so it's just incredibly brutal. Like, no one survives the forlorn hope.
Now I gotta add that.
But they're just really, really good. Like, it's just good. If you like history at all, I mean, if you don't like history or war, then but if you do, Cornwell writes historical fiction like nobody else. Patrick hasn't read Sharp, but he's read
the Arthur one.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for Alan to read Stormlight, to read those bridge runs.
Oh yeah, you're gonna love that one.
That's the kind of stuff I love.
I have to add, Alan, because you mentioned Mistborn. Piera from the channel Piera Ford on her Instagram stories was like, it was interesting, but like the characters were so bland and boring. And I was like, we are enemies now. And Patrick replied to my Instagram story. He said, "Dear God, my heart."
I didn't expect to see that.
Vin blew on me, but Kelsier is my I was like, Kelsier, go. And then
I
Vin,
knew
I'm
you
like,
would love
okay.
him.
I
She
know.
blew on me.
I knew you'd love him. Since Alex has left us, probably for like his children or something. So it's hard because I mean, also popular. I mean, I did enjoy Rhythm of War. I read Vengeful at the beginning of the year, and I really liked it. It's the sequel to Vicious by V.E. Schwab. It's like kind of fantasy. I mean, I always don't know exactly what to consider it. A lot of people didn't like the second one as much as the first. I know, Jesse, you said your husband is reading it, right?
Yeah, he doesn't like it at all. He loved Vicious, but he didn't like it at all.
I greatly enjoyed that one. My thing this year was so aggravating for me in that I felt like every popular, well-known fantasy book that I picked up, I did not like. It felt like I'm like, what is going on? And I got to a point where I even had when I read Steelheart and didn't like Steelheart, I think I had a community tab post where I was like, I'm not trying to be like hipster. I just am not like any of the popular stuff. I don't know why, but I guess that's one of the more popular. And then for non-fantasy, I actually had quite a few I really enjoyed, but some of them, again, I'm like, I guess they could go like, I really enjoyed Kingdom of Back by Marie Lu, which is magical realism, so like kind of fantasy. I really enjoyed Knife of Never Letting Go, which is science fiction. Yeah, I did quite like that one. There was one scene where I was so mad at the character, and I just felt like it came out of nowhere. But I just like kind of pretend that scene didn't happen. There's a character, he just like goes into rage mode for no reason. And well, it felt like no reason to me. But I'm like, dude, calm down. I just wanted to, anyway, I was very mad at him at that part. But then,
Read the next books.
What?
Read the next books.
I know. And then I really liked Between the World and Me. Which is a memoir, and I really liked Slay. I thought that was really fun. And The Downstairs Girl. The Downstairs Girl is a book. It follows a girl who is Chinese. Her family were immigrants, but it takes place like the slaves in America have been freed, and we're getting to a point now with like women's rights to vote. And so there's a lot of human rights going on. And she cares about, because she lives in America, so she's an American, but a lot of people see her as other because she's Chinese, and she really wants to help support the women's rights movement, but they kind of don't want her to because she's Chinese. Like they feel like she brings down their cause. And it's just like, it's so aggravating, but she finds a way to kind of secretly write almost like an advice column in the local newspaper, basically. And she's really sassy, and it's like her voice in the newspaper column is really fun, but it would be illegal for her to do that if they knew that it was her. But somehow, despite the sounding like kind of sad and tragic, the book is really cute. I don't know how the author managed to take such a sad circumstance and then make the book so charming. It definitely could have gotten probably heavier, but I felt like it's a young adult book too. So I feel like it's a great book for somebody who's being introduced to all of these complexities. And I thought it was really, I mean, every time I think about it, I'm like, that book was so cute. It was also really bad, but it was so cute. So I don't know if Alex is going to come back. I feel kind of bad being like, peace out, man. But
He gave this answer in the chat. He said, Words of Radiance and Dune.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Those were definitely popular ones. So that'll be it for our favorite books of 2020, or at least some of our favorite books, because I feel like a lot of us had so many. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Let us know what your favorites were. Let us know your thoughts on the books that we mentioned. Definitely go check out Patrick's channel. Go say hi to him. He is great. And we'll see you guys later.